This is Britton Colquitt, Super Bowl 50 champion, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural, dry-aged USDA prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops. Wait till you taste their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, and of course the king of all those massive and gigantic cowboy cut and tomahawk cut ribeyes. Best I've ever had. Probably the best you ever had as well. Check them out at UppercutChops.com. That's UppercutChops.com. Or give them a call. Find out what's for dinner. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100 for UppercutChops.com. All right, big welcome in, everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates and independents from coast to coast. Everybody tuning in on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, WOW, Charter, and independent cable affiliates in select markets. Thanks for joining us. Also on Hotel TV, where applicable, and all of our streaming platforms as well. By the way, folks, if you're new to the show, you may have heard this before, maybe you haven't, but check this out. Vacation Buddies wants to give away 2 free nights to either Las Vegas, Orlando, or Branson, Missouri to you for answering a simple trivia question. Let's see if you can get it right. If you can, call 888-576-5777 with the answer for a couple of nights in any one of those locations. The trivia question is simple. It is, which NBA superstar won 6 NBA championships? Out of these, is it A, Magic Johnson, B, Shaquille O'Neal, C, Kobe Bryant, and D, Michael Jordan? If you know the answer, call 888-576-5777. Call Vacation Buddies. Although they are not affiliated with the station, they sure want to give you a couple of nights in Vegas, Orlando, Florida, or Branson, Missouri. Again, if you know the answer to the trivia question, call 888-576-5777. Call them right now. All right, now that we got that out of the way, of course, our friends over there want to give you something cool. I think that's pretty damn cool. All right, so, I have a question. When did it become okay? At what point did it become reasonable for boys to compete in girls' sports? I have no idea. I never thought it was ever in my lifetime going to be reasonable, because boys, of course, are 40% stronger than girls just by genetics. But at what point did it become necessary for this to even happen in the first place? And I kind of shake my head wondering about this, and I hear about it all the time in the media, this, that, and the other. Well, you got to remember, the media is controlled by who? The blue team. And what does the blue team do? They push these kinds of issues, whatever you want to call it. And they say, well, we want this one to be equal to that one to be equal to this one. But then again, a lot of people complain about it. And when people complain about it, then it divides the audience. Now, if they're trying to unite the audience, well, then one would think that they would have a different position, being the powers that be. But it sure seems as though there's no real alignment with this, because there are absolutely, it's party X and party Y, or party red and party blue, party this and party that. It's no one party, one group. And so in the sporting world, there's supposed to be a division or a rule where you don't talk about politics in sports. Now, we've talked about this before, but now when we think about it, we say, what are they really trying to do? How about this? How about Fox News has reported, and this is, they say, Linda McMahon called out Gavin Newsom as California officials reject a proposal to keep state Title IX complaints. How do you like that? California was found to be in violation of Title IX in the first place. That's right, an astounding round of boos. And why is it important? I'll tell you why it's important as we're going to go through this with Fox. I mean, this is ridiculous, folks. At some point, you draw a line in the sand and say, come on, man. Seriously. So how about this? Education Secretary Linda McMahon told California Governor Gavin Newsom that he will be hearing from Attorney General Pam Bondi after the state was found to be in violation of Title IX. So the California Department of Education, CDE, and the California Interscholastic Federation, that's the old CIF, rejected the U.S. Education Department Office for Civil Rights, we'll call that the OCR, proposed resolution agreement following transgender athlete controversies in high school athletics over the course of the school year. Now, that itself deserves a round of boos, and I'm not even going to get into that yet. But Linda McMahon shared the CDE General Counsel Len Garfunkel's letter to the OCR's regional director, Bradley Burke. And of course, the letter read, quote, the California Department of Education received the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights letter finding and proposed resolution agreement in the above referenced OCR matter. The CD respectfully disagrees with the OCR's analysis, and it will not sign the proposed resolution agreement, close quote. Now, McMahon also shared the CIF's response from its general counsel, Diane Marshall Freeman. Now, that stated, quote, the Office of the General Counsel for the California Interscholastic Federation, the CIF, is in your receipt of your letter directed to Dr. Ronald Nosetti, the executive director of the CIF. I wrote in response to your request that the CIF inform you in writing as to whether the CIF will sign the United States Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights proposed resolution agreement in the above entitled matter. In reply to your request, please be advised, please be advised that the CIF concurs with the response of the California Department of Education submitted to your office. I have attached a copy of the CDE's response for your reference. Consequently, the CIF will not be signing the proposed resolution agreement. McMahon's message to Gavin Newsom was quite clear. Quote, California has just rejected our resolution agreement to follow federal law and keep men out of women's sports. Turns out Governor Newsom's acknowledgement that it's an issue of fairness was an empty political grandstanding. And of course, this is at CA Governor. You'll be hearing from Pam Bondi, close quote. So that was on social media. And of course, Fox News Digital reached out to Newsom's office for comment, and the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights announced recently that the CIF and the CDE were in violation of Title IX. Now, that announcement came weeks after transgender high school track and field athlete A.B. Hernandez won medals in girls' sports competitions during the California State Championships. The transgender athlete participation in the event sparked nationwide outrage, specifically, of course, from our leader, Donald J. Trump, after he signed the No Men in Women's Sports executive order, which prohibits transgender athletes from competing against biological girls and women in sports. So the Education Department said the CIF and the CDE had 10 days to agree to the agency's proposed resolution agreement, partly in which stated, quote, to each female to whom an individual recognizes is restored, CDE will send a personalized letter to that girl or woman apologizing on behalf of the state of California for allowing her educational experience to be marred by sexual discrimination. Additionally, the CDE will issue a notice to all recipients of federal funding. Those recipients that operate interscholastic athletic programs in California require them to comply with Title IX. This will specify that Title IX and its implementation and implementing regulations forbid schools from allowing males to participate in female sports and from occupying female intimate facilities, and that recipients must adopt biology-based definitions of the words male and female. Now, that's pretty good stuff. By the way, close quote. So, first of all, we're going to give a nice round of applause just for that, because we can. And look, folks, it's a big deal when somebody speaks up on this, and this is going to carry into the next segment. It's a really big deal when somebody speaks up on it because, look, there is a dramatic difference, and men in women's sports and boys in girls' sports, it really doesn't give the women the chance that they deserve. So it's not fair to the women, not fair to the girls. It's just not fair, period. I don't care how you cut it up. Unfortunately, this has been going on. The blue team is pushing this agenda, and it's an abomination to sports as we know it. All right, folks, we're going to be back here on The Circus in just a few minutes. Lots more to come. Don't go anywhere.
I'm gonna barbecue your ass, you bullet!
I'm your ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it on air that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
They retail for your next car. Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
If you'd like to borrow up to $100,000 and get pre-approved in minutes, call the number we'll give you at the end of this commercial. Our lending partners have already loaned millions of dollars to individuals just like you, and we're ready to lend you up to $100,000 if you qualify. Even if your credit is not perfect, you could use the money to pay off high-interest credit cards, for home renovations, or consolidate existing debt. You can get flexible, easy-to-pay terms. The consultation to find out if you qualify is free. To find out if you qualify for our special financing program, call this toll-free number 24 hours a day. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. That's 800-335-1376. Important terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Loan amount, annual percentage rate, and term will vary depending on creditworthiness. Applying does not guarantee approval. Account approval is subject to verification and confirmation of your credit history and acceptance by a lender. If you choose to apply for a loan through us, a consumer report will be obtained to evaluate your creditworthiness in connection with your application for credit.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Check them out at csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. That's the College of Southern Nevada Athletics, csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. All right, longtime sponsor of the program. And welcome back to everybody listening in on all of our affiliates, including our friends. Special hello to our friends waking up with us over in Atlanta, WDJY 99.1 FM. Over in Auburn, Alabama, thanks for driving home with us on WAUD, home of the Atlanta Braves. Welcome in everybody else up and down the Midwest, out to the West Coast. Those driving up and down Interstate 15 between Southern California and Las Vegas. Thanks for joining us on 101.5 FM and 107.3 FM, Highway Country Radio, all the way up the coast through San Francisco to Seattle, down to Honolulu. CBS Sports 1500 KHKA, that's home of the Yankees, 49ers, and Alabama Crimson Tide, plus everybody else watching on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, WOW, Charter, and independent cable affiliates, Hotel TV. Everybody also streaming on Apple, Amazon, Audible, Spotify, Pandora, iHeart, YouTube, Stitcher, Deezer, and all those other, and everybody also bouncing around on the Mars rover. Thanks for joining us. It covers just about everybody listening. All right. Also, by the way, in case you missed it in the last segment at the beginning, there was a trivia question from Vacation Buddies. And in case you missed it, we'll give you a shot to answer a simple trivia question and pick up a couple of nights here in Las Vegas, in Branson, Missouri, or in Orlando, Florida. If you know which of these NBA superstars won 6 NBA titles. Was it A, Magic Johnson, B, Shaquille O'Neal, C, Kobe Bryant, or D, Michael Jordan? If you know the answer, 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777. Vacation Buddies is not affiliated with this station, but they want to give you a couple of nights in Vegas, Orlando, or Branson. So give them a call right now with the answer to the trivia question, 888-576-5777. All right, back to the story with this trans athlete situation in California not complying with Title IX. I mean, this is kind of a big deal, folks. If you think it's not a big deal, you better guess again, because this for past generations, this generation, future generations. And when you have a government structure that just doesn't seem to give a damn, like the state of California, I think they have arguably the worst governor in the history of governors. This guy, in my opinion, is the gum on the bottom of the state of California's shoe. That would be Gavin Newsom. And Gavin always gets astounding news on this show. And frankly, it's not just from me, it's from a lot of people. I don't care what side of the political fence you're on. This guy just doesn't seem to do the right thing for the people, and I think he's been bought and paid for, in my opinion, many, many a time. So it is what it is. And so there's a lot of heat being put on this guy right now. And let's face it, it is the CIF that's really putting a lot of heat on him. That's basically the high school sports set up for the state of California, right? And so there's an issue with this. And what they don't like is the idea that, well, look, there are boys competing in girls' sports. And in fact, the CDE and the CIF will rescind any guidance that advised local school districts or CIF members to permit male athletes to participate in women's and girls' sports to reflect that Title IX preempts state law when state laws conflict with Title IX in the first place. As a matter of fact, according to, well, here, let's just read this just so you got this. How about this? Quote, the CDE will require each recipient and CIF to submit to CDE an annual certification that the recipient and CIF have complied with Title IX. Accordingly, CDE, or California Department of Education, in case you don't know what that is, will also propose to the OCR, that's the Office of Civil Rights, a monitoring plan to ensure that recipients are fully complying with Title IX, close quote. So Gavin Newsom's office responded to the initial announcement, brushing off the president's threat to defund California. Imagine that. And of course, his response, and he says, essentially, previously, they talked about transgender participation in girls' sports several months back, whatever it was, with prominent conservatives and so forth. Yeah, how'd that work out? So that particular conservative, to be nameless, quote, the young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say, no. Would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports? Close quote. And then again, Newsom told Kirk, quote, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. And it's an issue of fairness. It's deeply unfair. I'm not wrestling with the fairness issue. I totally agree with you. Close quote. Well, if he agrees, then how come he's not doing anything about it in the first place? So this is all political double talk. That's good old Aunt Nancy's nephew. In case you don't know who Aunt Nancy is, that would be Nancy Pelosi. You may remember her and her chaos in Washington, D.C. as well. That's right. So anyway, that particular conservative had said this person had pressed Newsom on whether he would condemn the athlete in question from the Yoruba Valley High School after the athlete won another event. Newsom did not directly address the win, but said it's a fairness issue. So that's easy to call out the fairness of that. There's also humility and grace. These poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with. So both things I hold in my hand. How can we address this issue with the kind of decency that I think, is inherent in you, but not always expressed on the issue? Close quote. This guy is talking out of the left side of his mouth and the right side of his mouth at the same time. Nobody even knows what the hell he said. That's just a bunch of political gobbledygook. And so Newsom further explained his point of view in a press conference when asked whether there should be a law to prohibit males from competing in girls' and women's sports. Needless to say, good old Gavin says, quote, and I'm about as transparent about this as anybody out there, particularly in my party on this, and to the extent someone can do away with it that's respectful and responsible and could find a kind of balance that I'm open to discussion. You're talking about a very small number of people, a very small number of athletes, and my responsibility is to address the pressing issues of our time. And this, I think, has been colored in and weaponized by the right to be maybe 10 times, 100 times bigger than it is. And so my focus is on a myriad of other issues in the state. And to the extent that someone could find the right balance in the conversation, meaning the humanity around the conversation, not the politics around the conversation, close quote. Well, first of all, that's right. First of all, what he said, as I saw it, as I read it, it makes absolutely no sense. How are you going to say that a handful of people are less significant than others, and how are you going to say a handful of people are more significant than others? So what he's trying to say is he's using both sides of that conversation. He doesn't want to address it because he knows it's unfair in the first place. But what's worse is that if he does endorse it, then he abandons his political party in the state of California. And remember, the spread between sports and politics is supposed to be gigantic, but nowadays it's almost two of the same. When you see players from Super Bowl teams and their girlfriends take up more media time than anything else when it comes to, every time there's a play, we're going to show this couple here because they matter. When they really don't matter, they're just two onlookers of the game out of 70,000 people or 50,000 or 30,000 people, whatever the heck it is. It doesn't matter. The reality is the political position of the networks that air those people of some kind of political influence or influencers are really the message they're sending. So in this case, Gavin Newsom is saying, I'm not going to endorse and I'm not going to bat down these transgender athletes because I'm going to abandon my political party and I'm going to lose my state to the other party. That's what this is about, folks. That's why we're talking about it, because we know that men and boys competing in women's and girls' sports is absolutely unequivocally unfair. And you could play this episode today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, next decade, next century. It's all going to be unfair. Why? Because men and boys are 40% stronger genetically than girls and women. Period. And that really is the end of the discussion. Therefore, they should never compete in women's sports. If women are strong enough to compete in men's sports, let them do it. I have no problem with that, but it's completely unfair to the girls and to the women. Back here in a few on The Circus. Don't go anywhere. I'm your ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it on here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Hello Americans, it's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes to the IRS or state, don't worry. I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. In today's economy, the IRS has released a variety of new rules and is offering more flexible terms to help Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. If you apply today, we may be able to lift your wage garnishments and release a freeze on your bank assets or business. Our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, they can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your IRS debt for far less than what you owe. Pick up your phone right now and call us for a free $500 IRS tax review. Don't wait. Here's the number.
Call right now. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. For the last time. That's 800-950-2049.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
Hey everyone, Dave Jackson here, ESPN rules analyst on ESPN Hockey, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP-TV studio, AAMP Television. Folks, make sure to check out thesportscircus.com for upcoming guests, our prior guest recorded shows, which can be found on all streaming platforms as well as social media platforms as well. When you're at thesportscircus.com, check out the partners page. Lots of great partners over there. One of our favorites, nonetheless, is Al's Number One Italian Beef, 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy. That's Al's Number One Italian Beef, the creators of the Italian beef sandwich, 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy. They've been in business since 1938, serving it up, and the sandwich was created by them way back in their family 117 years ago. That's unbelievable. And if you can't get over to 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy, check them out at alsbeef.com. That's alsbeef.com. Yes! All right, welcome back to everybody. You know who you are. TV and radio, streaming, and so forth. Now, in the last segment, we've been talking about this situation where the boys and the girls competing and so forth and so on. It's the boys competing in the girls' sports. And look, it's a real problem. And Gavin Newsom, of course, in California does not want to acknowledge the problem because all it does is it creates controversy and it divides the voter base and all this other crap. Where sports today is focused so much on analytics. And here's the real confusing part of it. When you look at the analytics of this sport, that sport, they break down everything. Like in baseball, for example, it's down to the exit velocity and the revolutions per second and all this other crap. And what they don't do is they don't use these analytics, or they don't want to use the analytics when it comes to talking about why boys and men should not compete in girls and women's sports. So it's convenient how they use that to their advantage, those that are pro chaos in sports, if you will. And Title IX says, oh, no, you don't. You're going to stay on your side over here. Boys, you're going to compete with the boys. Men, you're going to compete with the women. Girls, you're going to compete amongst yourselves so we can maintain the integrity of girls and women's sports. I mean, imagine if you had, I don't know, the U.S. women's national soccer team, right, which is a pretty good soccer team. And now you bring in a bunch of guys that play on the team. Well, would that be fair to the balance of the nations out there for Olympic play and all this other stuff? No, of course it wouldn't be fair. The women are very, very, very strong. My sister was one of those gymnasts. The women are no match for the men's strength when you think of what the men do versus what the women's do. Imagine the floor exercise, and imagine if you put a trans guy in there that happens to be a male gymnast that is, again, a lot stronger and may not necessarily have the dexterity of the women, but boy, they can really get up and bounce and tumble like you wouldn't believe. There is a significant advantage even in the floor exercise. What about if the women did the rings event and the pommel horse event like the men's? I mean, could they do it? Sure, they could do it. Are they strong enough to do it? Yeah, they're probably strong enough to do it, but the men have a decided advantage in strength. And so it's just not fair. Now, speaking of not fair, we go back to what happened on the college level. So that was the high school level. How about this? How about the University of Pennsylvania is to ban trans women from women's sports. And of course, this is all focused on the whole Leah Thomas situation. Now that's pretty exciting. And good for UPenn. Good for the University of Pennsylvania. You can call them UPenn. Good for UPenn to actually do this. Now, this is a good situation. Now, this according to the Four Letter Network. The University of Pennsylvania modified a trio of school records set by transgender swimmer Leah Thomas and said it would apologize to female athletes disadvantaged by her participation on the women's swimming team as a part of a resolution of a federal civil rights case. Is that what it takes? Does it have to take a lawsuit for the Ivy League to do something? UPenn's a great school. It's a very, very good school. But look, you got to remember, folks, this is according to the Four Letter Network, who is hyper blue in the first place. They're owned by Disney, right? And so the reality is, it says a part of a resolution of a federal civil rights case. Now, if that civil rights case wasn't going on, would UPenn actually take this away? Would they modify the school records? Would they do any of that? Well, let's carry on. The U.S. Education Department and University of Pennsylvania announced the voluntary agreement of the high-profile case that focused on Leah Thomas, who last competed for the Ivy League schools back a few years ago when she became the first openly transgender athlete to win an NCAA Division I title. So the department investigated Penn as a part of the current administration's broader attempt to remove transgender athletes from girls' and women's sports, concluding the University in Pennsylvania in Philadelphia had violated the right of female athletes. So under the agreement, UPenn agreed to restore all individual Division I records and titles to female athletes who lost to Leah Thomas and send a personalized apology. That's right, a personalized apology to each of those swimmers, the education department said. But why did it have to come to that? It had to come to a particular case. Because would they have done it otherwise? Hell, it's been a few years. I don't think so. They would not have done it. They would have just carried on as I see it. Nonetheless, so the Penn website showed the other athletes holding the school's top times in Thomas's event. And the site was annotated with the note that read, quote, competing under eligibility rules in effect at the time, Leah Thomas set program records in the 100, 200, and 500 freestyle during the 2021 and 22 season. While Penn's policies during the 21-22 swim season were in accordance with the NCAA eligibility rules at the time, we acknowledge that some student athletes were disadvantaged by these rules. We recognize this and will apologize to those who experienced a competitive disadvantage or experienced anxiety because of the policies in effect at the time, close quote. That was by Penn President Larry Jamison. So as a part of the settlement, the university must also announce that it will not allow males to compete in female athletic programs, and it must adopt biology-based definitions of male and female, the department said. So now in his statement, Jamison said, University of Pennsylvania has always been in compliance with the NCAA and Title IX rules as they were interpreted at the time, and that the university has never had its own policies around transgender athlete participation. Now, the school followed changes to eligibility guidelines as they were issued earlier in the year, and the NCAA changed its participation rules for transgender athletes, limiting competition in women's sports to athletes who were assigned female at birth. Now, in fact, he said, quote, our commitment to ensuring a respectful and welcoming environment for all of our students is unwavering, At the same time, we must comply with federal requirements, including executive orders and NCAA eligibility rules, so our team and student athletes may engage in competitive intercollegiate sports, close quote. Education Secretary Linda McMahon called it a victory for women and girls. And of course, we had Linda in the prior couple of segments talking about this. This is pretty significant. Now, the department, here's a quote here from McMahon, quote, "The department commends UPenn for rectifying its past harms against women and girls, and we will continue to fight relentlessly to restore Title IX's proper application and enforce it to the fullest extent of the law," close quote. And that does deserve a bigger applause. No question. I mean, look, folks, this is a big deal. Because if you start taking away what women can and can't do and saying men are going to invade that space, well, guess what? Now you got a bigger problem. So in the next segment, as we continue on with this from the University of Pennsylvania, we're going to reflect on this of where it has gone historically, how the whole thing kind of happened, and where we're going from here. Because I have to say that now it is at the political forefront of the division of sports in this country, and I would even think worldwide too, because even the International Olympic Committee had done something about this as well. But listen, folks, this is a real big deal, and it should never be taken lightly. Men do not belong in women's sports. Back in a few on the Circus.
Do you know someone with a drug or alcohol problem? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything. Stop the drug and alcohol nightmare. Are drug and alcohol problems hitting you too close to home? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything.
800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. That's 800-831-1560.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. B-E-E-P-I-N autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
If you served in the Marine Corps, by now you know about the contaminated water problem at Camp Lejeune. If you were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987, you probably have a lot of questions. We have some answers. You could be entitled to compensation. Billions of dollars are being allocated to pay for damages to anyone stationed at Camp Lejeune during that time. Unfortunately, it appears that officials may have known the contaminated water problem existed and did little to protect their men. The Semper Fi code was not honored. If you or someone in your family has developed a serious illness, including various forms of cancer, call this Camp Lejeune legal support line right now. You can't turn back the clock and change what happened, but you can certainly call right now and learn your rights as a Marine. Here's the number.
Call 800-335-7196. 800-335-7196. That's 800-335-7196.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Urlacher. Welcome back to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP-TV studio, AAMP Television. Again, folks, make sure you check out the sportscircus.com for our upcoming guests and prior guests, recorded shows, which can be found on all streaming platforms. Also, check out the store page. Lots of great items there at the store. Hats, hoodies, t-shirts, sweatpants, coats, pants, pillows, mouse pads, travel mugs, coffee mugs, all kinds of neat stuff with the Sports Circus logo on it. Very clever logo if you want to know more about that. Info@thesportscircus.com. Info@thesportscircus.com. And of course, make sure you mention Ringmaster Sal, that would be me, for a 10% off on all of your store purchases as well here at the circus. Yes! All right, welcome back to everybody. Radio TV, you know who you are. And back with this Title IX situation, and we were talking about the University of Pennsylvania and what they did. They kind of caved. They had to comply because there was an ongoing case about this. So they said, what we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this whole Leah Thomas situation. We're going to go ahead and restore the records as to what they were and so forth and so on. And of course, the athletic director or the president of the University of Pennsylvania had said, well, our commitment to ensuring a respectful and welcoming environment for all of our students is unwavering. At the same time, we must comply with federal requirements, including executive orders and NCAA eligibility rules, so our teams and student athletes may engage in competitive intercollegiate athletics, close quote. Now, Educational Secretary Linda McMahon had called it a victory, of course, for women and girls, stating the department commends UPenn for rectifying its past harms against women and girls and will continue to fight relentlessly to restore Title IX's proper application and enforce it to the fullest extent of the law. So, former University of Kentucky swimmer Riley Gaines thanked President Donald Trump on social media and wrote of the settlement, quote, "Our pig's flying." Kind of like that one. So, Gaines had said she started her activism against transgender athletes competing in women's sports after sharing a locker room with Thomas, being Leah Thomas, at the 2022 NCAA Championships. The Education Department opened its investigation in February of that year and concluded in April of that year that University of Pennsylvania had violated Title IX, a 1972 law forbidding sex discrimination in education. Such findings have almost always been resolved through voluntary agreements. If the University of Pennsylvania had fought the findings, the department could have moved to refer the case to the Justice Department or pursued a separate process to cut the school's federal funding. So, folks, is that what this is about? Is this about schools and...
Show me the money!
Think about that. Think about the budgeting. Think about the many, many millions of dollars that would flow to the University of Pennsylvania. Yes, it is the University of. It is not a private school per se. It's the University of. So there's state monies involved. There's federal monies involved. Private institutions don't get state monies. And so you ask yourself, well, if there are state monies involved and federal funding involved, then they have to comply with these kinds of things. Otherwise, the funding can what? Potentially get pulled. Now think back, several months back, the Education Department asked the NCAA and the National Federation of State High School Associations, that's the NFSHSA, to restore titles, awards, and records it says have been, quote, misappropriated by biological males competing in female categories, close quote. The most obvious target at the college level was in women's swimming, where Leah Thomas won the national title in the 500-yard freestyle a few years back. And the NCAA updated its record books when recruiting and other violations have stripped titles from certain schools, but the organizations like the NFSHSA has not responded to the federal government's request and did not respond to emails seeking comment. It was not clear how either would determine whether or which events had a transgender athlete participating years later. So what is that telling you? Well, I'll tell you what it tells me, folks. It tells me that their money was going to get funny. So what they didn't want to do is they didn't want to bring chaos and controversy to basically take money out of the school's budget or out of their expectations, so to say. And if they didn't want to do that, well, better yet, if they did it, what would that do? Well, I'll tell you what it would do is they would have to have department cuts from the regular funding. Now, of course, UPenn is an Ivy school, and they get plenty of donor money. So it's not like they would have missed it. So did they jump over $1 to save a dime? Because they have a particular policy is the question, did they sell out to gain federal funding? Did they sell out to gain state funding? Did they sell out to be one of the conformists? Or did UPenn say, well, we want our money, and are we going to jump over $1 to save a dime? As a matter of fact, we're going to, because our admissions numbers could drop. And if they drop, the other Ivy schools or baby Ivies or whatnot would end up getting some of those applicants, whether it was Princeton or Yale or Dartmouth or even the babies like Williams College, for example. What would they end up with out of the applicant pool from UPenn? And what about the others that are at the same level, if not greater? My alma mater, Duke University. And they are at the exact same level of all those other Ivies. How many applicants would they gain? And Duke's application admittance, from the last I saw, it was somewhere around, I want to say it was about 4%. I can't, don't quote me on this one. I think it was about 4% of all the applicants that actually applied got in, maybe 4, 5, 6%. I don't know. It was a really low number. It was in line with what Stanford and Harvard and Yale and Dartmouth and Princeton and Brown and Cornell and Columbia, what all those schools have, even Northwestern and even Caltech. So my question is, did they want to be excluded from that group by causing national attention in the negative? This is really what it comes down to. So is it a scandal? Is it controversy? Is it about doing what's right? Is it about money?
Show me the money!
I don't necessarily believe it's about anything but money. Because think about this, folks. The applicant pool. Now, I've been a college recruiter for Duke University for 25 years. And I can assure you that if the university does something in the negative light, which they just don't do, then it hurts the applicant pool. And Duke is a private school. So they don't get the state funding, for example, like the University of Pennsylvania gets, or like the University of California gets, for example, for all those that went to UC Berkeley, right? Berkeley, a fine school. Even UCLA, it's a fine school. University of Michigan, a fine school outside the athletics. The point is, if you make mistakes, your applicant pool drops off. And with the shifting of these conferences, listen, now the Big Ten has expanded, as everybody knows, which includes 4 schools from the Pac-12. And they took the best schools from the Pac-12 as far as they didn't take the 2 best academic schools because those went to the ACC, being Stanford and Cal. But they took Washington, probably the best public school in America. They took UCLA, which is a really damn good public school. They took USC, which is a really strong research institute, and the University of Oregon. They took 4 strong schools. They brought them right into the Big Ten, which now spans from coast to coast. They have New York, Chicago, LA in their TV markets. No other conference has that. The ACC took the 2 academic strengths to go with the other academic strengths in the conference. And so you ask yourself, what happens to UPenn if they don't make these changes? Now they're shown in my opinion, in a negative light. So if they're in a negative light, the applicant pool drops off. And maybe those kids that would have applied to UPenn maybe would have applied to Stanford instead, because now Stanford is in the nearby Atlantic Coast Conference. So you can see the money flow is a big deal. With Stanford now playing in the sandbox on the East Coast, it changes everything because they are in the ACC. So you ask yourself, what are the choices do intercollegiate athletics have now that the ACC stretches to the West Coast and the Big Ten stretches from east to west? Remember, with the Big Ten, with obviously Northwestern in there, the University of Michigan in there, UW in there, and UCLA and USC, and a whole bunch of good schools. And don't forget, not too terribly far away from UPenn, just a little bit south of Nashville, is Vanderbilt University. That's right, there are a slew of options. So UPenn had no choice but to comply because applicant pools likely, in my opinion, would have dropped off, which could have hurt the school's reputation academically, and it could have shed a negative light on the applicant pool. So I believe they had to play ball, going all the way back to the very top of this when it said that there was an issue, and the issue was part of a civil rights case, a federal civil rights case. Now, do you think an Ivy League school wants to be a part on the wrong side of a federal civil rights case? This is why we're talking about this, folks. Yes, this is legal. Yes, this is business. Yes, this is politics. But it all surrounds sports. This is a sports, entertainment, and news program. We start out as just sports, but folks, we've expanded over the couple thousand shows we've been doing this for the last thereabouts 9 years. And I can assure you, as the content has progressed, the storylines progress, the perspectives absolutely progress. But if you don't look at this, how the politics in this reflects against the sports, which reflects against the education and the educational departments and the institutions. Remember, educational institutions are the building blocks of what? Of an economy. And that is Economics 101. We'll see you in about 23 hours right here on your favorite station. Until then, so long, everyone.
If I was your mother and you had a drug problem, I'd grab you by the ear and make you call and get help. You can be in treatment tomorrow and start to get clean in 7 days. Follow Mom's advice and call the Detox and Treatment Helpline now. Write this number down.
800-814-8628. 800-814-8628. 800-814-8628. That's 800-814-8628.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. B-E-E-P-I-N autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.